This is Zach Shane with Repoint Technologies, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to get started with SharePoint Search. So right now we're looking at the SharePoint Admin Center and I'm at the term store. This is where your taxonomy is going to be laid out for your SharePoint environment. So for this example, I've created an intranet group with multiple term sets and then an IT group as well with a duplicate term set and some reused terms. So it's a good thing to note that when you're starting out with a taxonomy, you want to make sure you're a term store administrator. So either add yourself if you're not already there. That's going to help with some things throughout SharePoint as well. So to create a new group, all I have to do is click on the taxonomy and say new group. And so when I do that, I can provide a name. I've already done this here. You can provide a description as well and some managers. And then I want to go into term set. So same thing here, select new term set. And then I've done that here for department importance and management level. So when I expand these are all of my terms. So this is really what you're going to be selecting within your documents. So when I do that, I can create a term the same way. And then I create my terms. And then you can set some other features here. But the default settings will be enough to get you started and tagging documents. So once you've created all your terms, you can see here I've reused these terms. So for IT, we've created an importance level, but we've added these two terms here and then reused the standard default terms that we created up here within the intranet group. So we just added a couple escalation tiers for IT. So once you've laid out your taxonomy, now you can start pulling this into your document libraries, site columns, things like that. But what we're going to want to do next is go to the search administration. So if I come back up to the admin center and I click on search, I can click manage search schema. That's going to take me to the manage search schema page where I have my managed properties, crawled properties, and categories. So the main difference between the two, managed properties versus crawled properties, is that SharePoint performs a crawl across your site collections and it creates sort of this library of all of your different text, choice, metadata, column, all your different columns, and those fall into the crawled properties. So whether you have a drop down field, that's going to be in crawled property, and then managed properties is where you have by default you have your taxonomy fields, but then you also can create new managed properties to sort of link fields together. So for instance, in this we've got departments. So we created a taxonomy field that allows users to select department from a managed metadata column. However, there could be other libraries out there, lists, that users have created their own department dropdown with their own values in a choice column. And we want to be able to link all those together so that when we're searching, we can key on one single property, but search across all of those different column types and information. So we do that with managed properties. The crawled properties, like I said, are everything. So when we go to crawled properties and we search for department, you can see here there's some default people columns for department, but then we have department ID, we've got our dev department. This is one that I created a site column and linked up to the managed metadata. And then we have our tax ID for department, and then we have department down here. So the tax ID, wherever you see tax ID, that is the taxonomy field. So every time you create a new taxonomy term set, you're going to have SharePoint automatically creating for you this tax ID managed property and crawled property, and it's going to link up to the managed property automatically. That happens within about an hour. Sometimes it may take less, but there is a little bit of a delay there. And then you can see we have a bunch of others here. So this one in particular, this department crawled property, is a choice column that I created. And then you have dev department, which is a site column I created linking up to the managed property. So you can see you have, since it's a managed metadata column, you have the tax ID dev department as well. So all of these are relevant. We want to link up all of them within our managed property. In the crawled properties page, you can see if it's mapped to a property. So when you come in here, just doing this from scratch, it's not going to be mapped to anything unless you have your taxonomy fields, which will only be linked up to one here. So let's hop back. So manage properties. So what I did here is I just clicked on manage properties and then I said new manage property. And so once I do that, I have the ability to create a new managed property. And so I gave it a name. You can't include spaces or anything like that. And you can't reuse names. So you have to sort of create your own custom name here. And it will warn you if you try to save it. So things to look out for. You want to make sure that it's searchable, queryable, retrievable, and then if you'd like to allow multiple values. Down here, you get into the refiners and sorters. You cannot by default create a managed property that is refinable, sortable, and queryable. It just doesn't allow you to do that. So we're going to have to use what are called refinable strings, and we'll cover that in a second. So right now, have to leave those as no, and you can make it safe. You can also add a department or an alias, sorry. So I called this just dept. This is going to be easier to code with in XML when we're creating advanced search and things like that. You don't have to give it an alias if your name is good enough. And then you can leave some of these as default unchecked or checked. You don't have to mess around with those too much. What we really want to focus on is this managed mapping to crawled properties. So in order to map your managed property to all your crawled properties, you're going to have to click add a mapping and do these one by one. So we want to make sure we pull in everything. So we've got the dev department, which is our site column, the taxonomy for dev department, which is linked up to our managed metadata. And then we have our tax ID department as well. We want to make sure we get that taxonomy in there. And then we'll also want to pull in, for instance, I'll add a mapping here for the department choice column. So they'll link up to the choice columns that people create over time that aren't necessarily consistent with the taxonomy. Well, we want to be able to search for those as well. So if I just search for department, and then I can pull in department. Now you can see I've got dev department. I want to pull in all of this stuff. You can leave if you're doing a department, you can leave the people stuff out of this or link it in. It's not going to hurt anything. But you want to make sure you get everything in this managed property mapping. So for this, I'm just going to click OK. And yes, you have to do this one by one. So this is one of the kind of clunky aspects to the SharePoint Search property creation, is just you have to do this one by one. It's a little painful, but once you've done all that, you click OK, and that's going to save your managed property. Now, again, there's always a delay with this stuff because SharePoint has to search and crawl the entire site collection, all of that. It's done in a schedule. You can manually schedule these or put these in the schedule at the site or list or library level, but safe rule of thumb is about 24 hours. That's the same thing with if you delete a document, it's still going to be in the search results for probably a day until SharePoint recognizes that has changed in the logs, and it'll remove it from the crawl library, basically. All right, so what we've done so far is we created the taxonomy. We then looked up the taxonomy and then all the other choice fields and everything for our relevant department field. We can do this again for our importance level and any other taxonomy fields that we want to do. And so we wanted to make sure we got a managed property for that, linked up all the crawled properties, and now we're going to go off to our document libraries to start pulling that information in. So here I've got an intranet site where I've just put together a document library, some IT issues, and training documents. So if I go into my document library, got it up here. Well, this is training documents. So I've got my document library. I've pulled in already at the site column level, importance, management level, and related department. So you can see I've got multiple departments for each document in some places, and then I've got my importance levels. So I created these as site columns. I recommend you do the same. That just helps with naming conventions and things like that. It also helps with your mapping. So if you're creating columns at the list and library level, you'll have multiple mappings you have to do. If you do a site level, it's one per site. Makes it a lot easier. So to create those, if you're not familiar, you go to site information on a modern site, and then you can go to all site settings or just site settings on a classic site. And then here you're going to go to Site Columns, Create. You give it a name, select Manage Metadata. Come down here. You can also put it in an existing group or a new group. You can allow multiple values. For instance, our departments, we wanted multiple values, and then you would expand the taxonomy, expand the group, and then you would select your relevant term set here. So once you click that, it's highlighted, and you can hit OK at the bottom here, and you're done. So you do that for each of your managed metadata term sets, and you create your columns, and then you can pull them into the document library. So for instance, this is the training document library. You can see our department is a choice field, so that's where that extra department stuff other than the tax ID came through. And then we've got our management level. So if I wanted to add another one, I can add from existing site columns because I created those before. And this is where sort of the groups come into handy. So if I select internet, you can see importance and related department are already there. So I can click OK. And now it's in the library. So I can go and tag documents now. So I've done the same thing here. I've populated this with the drop down instead of the managed metadata column. And then I have my managed metadata columns here. So now that brings us to search. Now we have the documents, we've got all the terms connected, everything's kind of working together. We've waited 24 hours or so at this point. If you wanted to be sure that your stuff gets included in the next crawl, what you can do is back on your site or library, you can go to library settings if you'd like. Or let's just skip over to the site settings. And I recommend just doing this at the site level so you make sure you get everything. You don't have to go one by one, all your libraries. If you go down to the search section, go search and offline availability, you can click the box that says re-index site. Indexing web parts. So if you were searching, if you had pages of information that had web parts on them, that were displaying documents and things like that, you can index web parts so that they appear in search results too. So you can find the pages that this content shows up on. If that's not really where you're interested and you just want to find the source, then you can leave indexing off for those. So if I click re-indexing site, it's going to give me a little warning message. Depending on the size of your site collection, the libraries that you have, it can create a large load on the system. So you wouldn't want to do this if you have a ton of information across all your site. But typically, if you're working with just a small site or multiple sites, pretty safe to do this. So you just click reindex. Okay. So once that's done, again, wait 24 hours, and then we'll skip over to search. So I recommend creating a search site collection if you haven't already. So you can see we've got our search page. This is all the default. So when you create this, you're going to go ahead and create a site like you normally would, and then you would choose the enterprise template. And within the enterprise, there's a search center. You create the search center, and then it'll create all this content for you. So you've got your home page, which is just the standard search, and then you've got advanced search, which is under pages/advanced ASPX. So if I'm just searching for one of my documents, I can just type in one of the departments, like accounting, and see what comes up. So you can see down here, I've got test copy 1. That's one of the ones that we uploaded there. And you can see test copy 41. And you can see if I look at the path here, yes, that's coming from my departments under internet. And then this is also coming from the shared document library. So we've got multiple sources here and everything. Now, that's great if you know that you're looking for accounting documents. It's obviously pulling up some other stuff here too. This is where we'd want to sort of create or add on to the advanced search page, and I'll show you that next. But also, this is the results page. So whenever you perform a search, whether it's the advanced search or the simple search, you're going to be taken to a separate page called pages results, and you can see sort of your keyword equals accounting there. That's how the URL is built. And then we have these things called refiners. So one thing that we didn't touch on in the managed properties was refinable strings. So I'll do that now. So the difference between a managed property and a refinable string is that when we were setting up our managed property, we couldn't actually create a refinable and queryable property. So we have to use SharePoint's existing set of refinable strings. There's also ints, dates, things like that. But what these let you do is, if we look this up, we can actually refine the results further on the results page by using these. So you can see refinable strings, and what we've done here is we've taken 0, 1 and mapped it to all the same properties, just like we did for the crawled properties to the managed property. This is a managed property, but it's a refinable one. So let's just take a look at this. So if I edit it, we have no ability to change the name. These are default settings, but you can see all of this stuff is grayed out. We can't really change any of this, but we see now that the refinable setting is set to yes, active, and we can't change that either. But this is how SharePoint works. It has this sort of subset of refinable strings that it gives you that you sort of override and map out to your crawled properties so that you can use them on the results page. So we gave this a department alias so that it makes a little bit more sense on the page. And then we scroll down and we mapped them all to our crawled properties, just like we did before. So once we're done that, we click OK. So just like any other property, this is going to take 24 hours and then some indexing in order to go through. But once we're done that, it will appear in the page. So it's not going to appear on the left here automatically. We actually are going to have to edit this page. So if you just go to edit page like you normally would, this is just a web part page. So the refiners is a web part, and we're going to go ahead and edit that web part. And then we can select choose refiners. So by default, there's already some refiners available to us. But if we go ahead and search, we can come down to refinable. And we're getting close. Okay, 0, 1. So if we move that in there, we can give it a display name here. So we called it department. And we can just sort of leave all of the default settings the way they are. And then we'll click OK. And we'll just go ahead and check this in. And publish it. Now if I search for accounting, you'll see that we have our document still here, but then once the 24-hour period is up, you'll have that on the left there. So once the system has an opportunity to crawl, we'll actually see those refiners, and then you'll have multiple departments, if they're available for the documents that you've already searched for, appearing on the left, just like you'd see author here in result type. So now that's already set up, and we can do that for all of ours. So once we have the crawl has been performed, we actually can see all that. And it's good to sort of set that up first, and then as documents come through and have been crawled, that'll just appear. So I want to talk about the advanced search page a little bit. This is really where a lot of your hard work is going to come into play. From a user's perspective, the search is great the way it's designed, but it can be a little bit confusing because if users don't know what departments are available for searching, or they can't think of the department name, or maybe importance level, they don't know what the different variations of importance or severities there are. That's where sort of the drop-down relationship with the property really works well. And so the advanced search gives you that ability with the property restrictions. So by default, there's a set here, and it's just text column. So if I wanted to add, say, department to this, I could say department, and then equals, and then I would have to, again, type accounting. What's nice is it gives me the ability to add multiple, but where it's lacking is I still have to know the department name, or I still have to know what the available options are. So in my next video, I'm going to show you how to customize this using JavaScript, the JavaScript object model, and XML to be able to choose your custom managed properties that you created for each one of these, and then populate a dropdown or a data list in HTML to allow you to have the options right from the taxonomy. So we're going to retrieve the taxonomy from SharePoint, populate it dynamically into a data list, and then have that be able to be filterable on the results page. So it's going to be a little bit more involved and a little bit too much to cover in one video. So check that out. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.